I always tend to take my own personal responsibility seriously. When I learn something, I have to be my own experiment. And that's kind of what this was like, how much food can I grow and how successful can I be at it, and how many people in the neighborhood can also benefit from this produce, and it's been kind of amazing to me.
This is Peak Moment. We are living at a peak of human innovation, information, wealth, and health. But we're also at a peak of population and consumption, with rising temperatures and declining resources fueled by cheap oil and gas. Peak Moment Television, bringing you examples of positive responses to energy decline and climate change through local community action.
Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. I'm in Port Townsend, Washington on a classic Pacific Northwest overcast day with my guest, Judy Alexander.
Hi,
and
Janaea.
Who's this?
Archie.
Archie.
Archie the cat.
Archie the cat. We are in Judy's wonderful backyard. How did you get involved with adventuring in gardening and more? It's a lot more to it.
Well, I've been a gardener for a lot of years, just sort of hobbyist gardener. But what I'm doing now is definitely coming from a different place. And it's, I went to a real life-changing conference with Donella Meadows in the year 2000, I think it was, on global sustainability. And it just opened my eyes to the predicament that the planet is facing with limited resources and growing population and peak oil and all that stuff you guys know about. But this particular year was devoted, I've been trying to get out of my car for the last 6 years and have been reducing my fossil fuel usage pretty significantly. But this year's goal,
2006.
2006 goal
Yeah.
was to spend my summer seeing how much food I could grow on my property. And I live in town. I live 3 miles from the center of town in the city limits, and I have a lot that's 75 by 125, and then part of my neighbor's yard. And I've just planted something in every square inch of dirt I could find. So, and it's partly to see how much I can provide for myself and my neighborhood in the way of healthy food.
You've got I mean, that's a pretty major undertaking.
At the end of the summer, I would agree with you, Janaea. I didn't know what I was doing when I started.
I mean, you've got a prolific garden going here.
I do.
But it sounds to me that you took what Donella's workshop, you took something serious about that it wasn't just another set of good ideas. I mean,
it was huge. It was huge. It was like getting hit in the head with a 2x4. The second day of this 5-day workshop, the entire 90 people were completely depressed, and it was mostly by Donella's information because it seemed so hopeless. And then, luckily, the remaining few days of the workshop was a little more, inspiring and heartening to all of us. And the two of us that went there from Port Townsend came back with we made a 20-year commitment to each other to change our town.
Wow.
So.
Hey, thank you.
And then we met Dick and Jean Roy from the Northwest Earth Institute like 2 weeks later, and we spent 5 years getting 70 Northwest Earth Institute courses started just in Port Townsend.
Which are about what? Tell us just a word or two about what those courses are.
Voluntary simplicity, choices for sustainable living, deep ecology, discovering a sense of place, perspectives on the global economy, and there's one called Healthy Children, Healthy Planet. That's a new one. And they're 8-week classes that you just get a group of people together, and it basically clarifies your understanding and your value systems around, the challenges to sustainability for us as a species.
So you spent a while here sharing and educating your neighbors in your town.
Definitely, yeah.
And still are, I think.
Yeah.
And this year in the garden are doing a demonstration, really, of, is that right?
Yeah, it's turning out to be a demonstration, but it was more, I think that garden was really more of a personal challenge, I think, I've been learning a lot about genetically modified foods. I've been seeing more and more how unhealthy the mainstream food supply is becoming, and I just didn't want to be part of it. I just felt like, how am I going to take better care of myself? And I always tend to take my own personal responsibility seriously. When I learn something, I have to be my own experiment. And that's kind of what this was like, how much food can I grow and how successful can I be at it, and how many people in the neighborhood can also benefit from this produce? And it's been kind of amazing to me.
Well, it's
I kind of shocked myself. I mean, the
Here we are.
the
Here we
potato supply alone, this isn't even the entire harvest. This is probably about half the potato harvest
So
right
we've
here.
got 3 huge boxes
Yeah.
of potatoes. Show us one of these.
I never,
mean,
this thing is huge. It's like, this one's even
it's a
bigger.
meal for 3 people.
I know, except the truth is I could probably eat it, but I just was, and it's not even the middle of August. I dug these a week or 2 ago, so like they were even harvestable before the end of the summer.
So you've got. I mean, this is your winter supply, or a
Maybe.
good part of it.
Yeah,
A
if they
good part of
last,
it.
yeah. I mean, if they store well.
So part of what you're in your thoughts here is, what is your land capable of, and your own energy and your own resources,
Exactly.
and with an eye to not just, I'm taking care of myself here.
No, I want to inspire
share.
people. I want to show people what you can do. It's like you can really provide for yourself in a way. It definitely takes time, and it takes a certain amount of physical capacity and energy. I do spend time in my garden probably every day, but I don't want people to feel so dependent on, we have a 3-day food supply. One of my projects this last year involved going down to the Gulf Coast after Katrina, and I saw what happened to an entire community in the face of a disaster. And we're a waterfront community. We could have a tsunami, we could have an earthquake, we could have our food supply cut off like that. And in our county right now, there's not even a 3-day food supply. If we get cut off from the mainstream, the Olympic Peninsula is the first to go from the power grid. I mean, we have all sorts of inherent vulnerabilities in our location that people kind of like don't pay attention to,
Well, because it means you have to change your life.
Yeah.
Right, and our habits, and we've become so accustomed to the petroleum rolling and the food coming in and the grid working and so on.
Yeah, but I want to go on record for saying how much fun this is. I don't think it would be as much fun if the earthquake happened last week and I was quick planting a garden because I didn't think I could survive and I was scared. But because I'm not scared, I'm challenging myself, and it's completely fun and joyful for me to, come up with all these potatoes with very little effort. It's not, the potato patch was a breeze. It was easy.
That's great.
So I just think that people need to realize that even though getting in your car and driving to Safeway is easy, there's a lot of joy they're missing out on by being that dependent on the mainstream supply.
And you probably have all kinds of stories about how you enjoyed eating these for the next while, right? How many things did you try growing this year?
Well, I actually thought I had about 35 or 40 like different crops, or if you want to call them crops or plants that I was growing, but I actually wrote them down and I have almost 60.
60?
Yeah.
That's astounding.
Yeah.
Well, I see you've got fruit trees, you've got some pear trees that were part of this land, yes?
Yeah, I've got it. I've been adding them too. I moved in here 5 years ago and there was probably about 6 or 7 fruit trees, but I have since planted an extra cherry tree and a peach tree, which I didn't know you could grow here.
Wow, I
but
didn't either.
I have 1 peach on my peach tree this year. And I am looking to see if I can find some space to put in a nut tree or 2. I don't know if I'll be able to figure that out. But I have probably, 10 or 12 fruit trees.
So what are the most sort of out there kind of things that you planted this year?
Well, I tried one celery plant first to see how it would grow. It was actually red celery, which I'd never seen before. I bought it at the co-op, a little celery start.
Yeah.
And I've planted leeks really successfully. And I've planted, my main production goal this summer was to grow very successful cauliflower because I had failed in previous years.
I see.
And I grew 17 really big, juicy, yummy, sweet cauliflower.
Congratulations.
And same number of cabbages. I had red and green cabbages, and 4 kinds of onions, and 6 kinds of lettuce, and
you got raspberries,
5 kinds of berries, blueberries, carrots, beets, beans, corn,
squashes.
About 5 kinds of squash, tomatoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the usual and then some unusual stuff, some more successful than others.
And so probably out of that you've learned what you'll try next year, or what you might put somewhere else next year, or a different variety or whatever.
Yeah, and what I'll repeat just because I loved it so much. The cauliflower is a definite comeback.
I can tell that.
So,
well, what I'd love to do is take a little bit of a tour, because you've got some ingenious things that you're doing here, and probably a place to start, since I look at the cloudy sky, it's like, is it about rain and water and irrigation and that whole thing. So you've got what, a rainwater catchment system.
Yeah, and it's something that my brother has designed for me. It's not my, I'm not as physics oriented as he was, but I purchased, I think, 10 rain barrels, $25 a piece through the extension service, and I have 4 catching water off roofs of buildings, and the other 6 receive water from those 4 barrels.
Let's go take a look.
Okay. So this is one of my 10 rain barrels, and it's actually catching rain off of a little rental building in my front yard. And the black marks on the rain barrel measure 1/8 of an inch of rain fills the barrel this high.
1/8 of an inch to do this hole?
Because of the size of
Right,
the
of the
roof that
roof.
it's catching off of.
That's
This is a
exciting.
500 square foot building, so
Yeah.
it would be half of that
Okay.
of the roof.
Okay.
And so with 1/2 an inch of rain, this rain barrel fills, and that can happen in a couple hours or definitely overnight with a steady rain. And so the thing with rain barrels that was interesting for me to learn is that you get a lot of water with one rainstorm, and you have to really be on top of the system. It's not the kind of thing you can go and take a 2-month vacation and expect that it operates
Okay,
by itself.
okay.
Gardens and rain barrel systems definitely keep you on the
Be here,
property
yeah,
and
yeah.
make you pay attention to the weather. And it's all, for me, really good. It's
Yeah,
very
that's
grounding.
nice.
So,
So you collect the water here.
yeah.
And then what happens? Because you've got it up above ground level.
Right. The fact that it's raised up a little bit allows us to feed it to other garden barrels, and we'll go back and look at the ones in the garden that are not near a roof, which is great. I mean, because the water is where I need it by the plants. But this rain barrel is hooked up to a fairly tricky little hose system with those shut-off valves. It's got a splitter with shut-off valves, so you can actually fill this rain barrel from the tap, and you can fill it from the roof. So in the dry season, we fill it out from the regular water system, and that way you can keep track of how much water you're using. You can
yeah,
kind of
sure,
keep, it's
sure.
a contained amount, you can keep track of how many times you have to fill it.
So when you turn the spigot on, what happens? Where does it go?
You turn that spigot on, and with the splitter the way it is right now, it goes into a hose that travels alongside the fence that goes up the side of my property, and there's 3 rain barrels that this one barrel can fill.
Aha.
The first one is at the end of my raspberry patch that soaker hose irrigates my raspberries. The next one is on the other side of the fence that goes to the potato patch where those potatoes came from.
Okay.
And the last barrel on the line was one that irrigated my kale and onion beds.
So that's clever. I mean, it's just ding, ding.
There's one long hose with sort of
different-
splitter hoses off,
Right.
and then there's clips that you can clip on the end of the hoses.
you
So you
control
fill the
when-
first barrel, then you clip it, and it goes to the second
Yeah,
barrel. You
yeah.
clip it, and it goes to the third barrel. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this
Sure.
on, and we're going to get the water going to the raspberry patch, and we'll
Okay.
go back and take a look and see what's going on there. Doesn't take very long to fill, and each rain barrel that does fill has a little indicator flag that raises up.
So you
when
got a
the-
little float in it that,
Yeah,
that you
it's on a
know,
float,
that you
and the
know
flag raises
where
up
your
when that
level
barrel's
is.
full. Yeah.
Cute. We'll take a look at that in a second.
Okay, great. Okay, so this rain barrel here is the one that catches the rain from the biggest section of my roof. So we had to figure out when we made this system how to connect this rain barrel up to multiple rain barrels in the back. Because in a single night's rain, this roof right up here could catch probably 3 or 4 times the amount of rain that would fit into one barrel. So that's why the pipe runs across the way to this other little gutter system, and it goes down the gutter and
Okay.
feeds into the other rain barrels
All
in the
right.
back garden. And the flag at the top is what I mentioned before. It measures how high the water level is in the rain barrel, since you can't see through these. Like the white ones, you can see the level of the water, but the black ones you can't. So the flags are on a little float system, and they go up and they go down based on the level of the water.
Right.
And this is the freezer. It's an outside freezer.
That's a good use for
I
this.
didn't have room for it in my house, so it's outside, and it holds the rain barrel up, which is very heavy. And this sink has one faucet hooked up to the rain barrel. If I'm just washing off like paintbrushes or something that's just sloppy water, I just use the rain barrel water. If I need clean water for something, I can use this faucet. So That's a splitter over there between the hose for one and the sink for the other.
Okay. And the water goes down to finish
Into a bucket, and the bucket gets dumped on the garden.
So
As long as I know that the water's clean in the bucket, I put it in the garden. If I've done something sloppy in here, I'll take and dump it in the driveway or something.
I love it. This whole system, it's like it didn't take a rocket scientist, and it's cute. I mean,
It's
just
funky, but it works. It definitely works.
does.
And you know, the way that my rain barrels are set up, they definitely require some tweaking here and there. There's little things you have to go get a new splitter, or you have to change the height, or you have to get a new hose, or there's things you have to pay attention to keep it working. But it's totally fun.
Yeah, and it works. So from over here at the other barrels, then you've got it hooked up to other hoses and stuff for your other beds.
Yeah, let's go look.
Okay.
Okay, so these are the back rain barrels that are fed off the big roof, and these two white ones are hooked together so they fill simultaneously. And this one is hooked up to hoses that deliver water over to the corn patch
Okay.
with soaker hoses. This hose is buried underground and snakes around to the carrot row and the leek row and the broccoli row and where the cauliflower used to be before I ate it. And if I just turn this on like that, that activates the drip system, which this year I only have hooked up in those 3 rows. Next year I'm going to have the drip system as many places as I can get it because it's awesome. It's totally conservative of water usage. The rain barrels, just with this 3 foot off the ground, has enough pressure to force the water out the drip tape, and it delivers the smallest amount of water needed to the root system of the plants and nothing else. And then if you mulch on top of the drip tape, then the mulch keeps the wetness in too. So it's amazing. I haven't mulched the carrot row because the carrots needed to come up before
little guys.
But I will mulch them, and the leeks and the broccoli and the cauliflower were mulched, and it works really great. So,
What's this contraption?
this is great. I got all these 5-gallon buckets for jugs from the food co-op. They get a tamari or olive oil in them. And this delivers water to my fruit trees, which I don't have on drip system, just by taking this little thing down here and fill the bucket, and it's just a matter of about 30 seconds.
You don't have to fill it.
Yeah, and just hook it back up.
Clever.
So that works well.
That's really nice. I love it. From the rain, from the skies, to the roof, to the buckets, to the pipes, to the buckets, to the sucker. I mean, you've got a very inventive system that works so well for you.
It really does. It's fun. It's got a lot of moving parts, but it's totally works.
Yeah. Well, I want to go take a look over there at the bees.
All right, over to the
Something
bees.
else you got.
All right, we'll go look at the bees. All right, well, we're in the middle of the bee airport here. There's no air traffic control as far as I can
They're
tell.
sort of
but
everywhere.
They're coming and going a lot. And lots of them have a lot of pollen on their legs. It's pretty,
It's gorgeous, this beautiful orange color.
yeah, it's awesome.
So how did you get into doing bees?
Well, that's an interesting story. I mentioned the Northwest Earth Institute courses when we started talking. One time I was taking the course on choices for sustainable living, and this one woman was doing an opening at the beginning of the evening. And her opening, which is like just a little story at the beginning of the class, was telling us about her father keeping bees. And she had a bee box. And she got done telling the whole story about how she loved bees and all that stuff. And she said, and I'm going to give this bee box to Judy. And I went, really? You are? So I inherited a hobby that night without realizing it. And I have come to find out that keeping bees is not inexpensive. There is a fair amount of cost involved. And it turns out that Marty, the woman that gave me the bee box, has been willing to be my mentor. And she pretty much cares for the bees. I'm learning. But I just didn't want to invest in the whole suit and hat and all that stuff. She's got all the equipment, so she takes care of the bees for me. They definitely make my garden way, way, way more productive.
I'll bet they do.
The raspberry patch, they're just like in and out of that place all the time. And I have learned to not fear them. I've only been stung once or twice in about 3 years of having bees, so it's not. They're not unfriendly. But boy, are they busy. They're
just happy as can be. Sun coming out?
And I have had, I think, 10 swarms this summer.
Wow.
They go in that pear tree over there and this plum tree, and one swarm was about this tall, and about this big around. I don't know where all the
Whoa.
bees came from.
Wow.
It was huge. I'd never seen such a big one before. So I keep getting more hives, and then I've been giving them away. I know all the other people that keep bees in town now because they've been coming in, picking up the swarms and taking them home.
What I hear in this is a couple of things. One is we know that bees are endangered partly from diseases and killer bees and so on. And so this is a wonderful, healthy sign that you've got here, and that you're sharing it with your community, because that's part of the point about your garden here is
Exactly.
is that the bees are a shared project with people. So is your garden. I mean, one of the things that I just realized is that you said you have a lot and a half. Well, the half of a lot, the one that we're in,
It's
belongs
my
to your
neighbors.
neighbor.
It's my neighbors.
And I think the dramatic thing is to see what you've done in yours, actually, we ought to see, and what you started with. That's what
Yeah.
the rest of your neighbor's yard is like. Let's take a look at that.
Okay. How about some cabbage? Want some cabbage leaves?
Hey, girls.
These are my girls. I've got 9 girls. I wanted a multiracial flock, so I have 2 black ones, a white one, 2 brown ones, and 4 what I call checkerboards. And this is the 3rd incarnation of the chicken coop. I had to move it in a few different configurations in my little area back here because of learning as I go. It's my experimentation model. The first place had me walking through their poop to collect the eggs, and I thought that wasn't such a good idea. So now I can go like 10 steps outside my back door and just gather the eggs, and I don't have to walk
nice.
in the coop like this.
Yeah,
to
you
get
have
it.
a little box separately for that. That's great.
But I have like a garbage hierarchy on my system here, where the paper garbage goes to the trash, like in anybody else's house. Most of the organic food garbage goes to these guys, and they just process everything from melon rinds to everything leafy, greeny, seedy, breads, stuff like that. And then the like lower echelon garbage, like the coffee grounds and the tea bags, the worms get that.
Okay.
So we'll go look at the worm bin in a minute. But I like to send as little of my refuse to the garbage, to the curb.
Well, you're following the principle in nature that there is no such thing as waste. It just feeds the next thing in the process, and that's what you're doing here.
I totally enjoy bringing my clients out to the chicken coop when a chicken's just laid an egg and have them gather the warm egg fresh out of the chicken. And kids in particular are just awed by it. They've never seen it.
Well, you think about this, for a kid who's only seen cartons of eggs coming from the supermarket, I mean, these are live animals, and they're warm, and it's a miracle.
Yeah.
You're going to see a miracle.
Yeah. I even had one of my clients give me a chicken in trade for services once. It's kind of like the old stories of the country doctor.
Well, you know, the barter economy, that's we're probably going to do more and more of that in the times to come.
Yeah.
Hi, girls.
I love waking up to the sound of these guys clucking away in the morning, waiting for me to come and let them out of their coop. I do have to be a little bit mindful of, we have raccoons, even though this is in the city limits. There's raccoons and deer and all sorts of other kinds of wildlife that come through here. So I have to kind of listen for the distress signal. The chickens get all revved up when there's a raccoon anywhere close, because the trees overhead, I mean, the raccoons can actually be sitting in these trees and not still get to the chickens when they're cooped up at night. And but they can sense that something dangerous is nearby.
And be upset.
And I know what it sounds like when that's the case. I actually ran out of my house one night with, or afternoon actually, full mid-afternoon sun, barefooted to a raccoon with one of these chickens in its mouth.
Ooh.
And I screamed, and it dropped the chicken and scrambled out of the yard, and chicken was fine. But it's, part of the learning for me of growing so many plants and keeping animals and chickens and doing the worm bin and the compost heap and all this stuff is really seeing the whole cycle of nature and life and food, and it's just taught me so much about how things take care of themselves, really. I mean, it's like we mess with it a lot with the way we try to get rid of stuff, and there's chickens just know what to do with all this stuff. It's just, they teach me so much. So
that's how the natural world is, isn't it?
it
It takes care of itself very nicely.
does.
We have a lot to unlearn or relearn or learn in a different way on our human scale.
Yep.
Well, let's go take a look at the worms.
Alrighty. So, Janae, we're standing up above about the last 3 months of my food garbage right now. At least the stuff the chickens don't
Yeah,
eat.
right.
The remains of my tea bags and coffee grounds and sort of non-chicken garbage for the last few months.
Not
Okay.
much, really.
Well,
A lot of it
actually,
comes, but it's breaking down.
Yeah, I kind of
sure.
divided it. This half is closer to the finished thing, finished product of worm castings, and this is really quite rich in nutrients and kind of feeds back into the soil for
Okay.
growing purposes. And then you were remarking earlier about the
Yeah, in the newspaper,
newspaper.
I wouldn't have expected that in the compost here.
some worm keepers, I don't know what you call them, but some vermiculturists or whatever, put in cardboard, like corrugated cardboard, books, different things. My favorite story is that I had a bunch of old client confidential files that I needed to get rid of a few years ago, and I didn't have a paper shredder and didn't know somebody that had a paper shredder, so I took them out here and tore them up, and after about 3 months, my worms turned my confidential files into great compost for my garden.
So
And I felt like I had this secret, you know.
did. It's like, and you can just go to your carrots, your beets, and say, "Thank you, former client, for feeding me."
Right. I think they'd
Many
probably feel totally
levels.
secure knowing that's how I took care of their secret information.
So
So
there's
the-
a lot of worms in here. Little guys, big guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they tend to hang out in little enclaves, I
Yeah,
noticed,
little guy, big guy, both together.
And, sometimes it seems like they work kind of slow, and
It
then,
smells nice.
is it rich?
Yeah, it just has that nice, clean, woodsy, earthy kind of
Yeah.
fragrance. Nothing smelly, ucky at all.
Yeah.
Well, you do the whole cycle, don't you? We started from sun and rain to
It's kind of coming together for me in my mind, after I've kept the bees for a while and done the worms for a while and worked out the rain barrel system tweaks and stuff. And it's really feeling more like a working full circle thing.
got circles and circles. The whole life, life thing.
Yeah, it's real satisfying.
Thank you.
I
This has
can't-
been a great tour.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it. I just, I grew up in a suburb, and I feel like my heart is on the farm, even though this isn't a farm. I really love being close to the earth like this, and I would recommend it to anybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine.
You're watching Peak Moment. It is a peak moment with worms and all.